A warm welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. The general debate of the UN General Assembly holds this week on the 23rd. The 80th session of the UNGA already began on September 9. But this year's theme is Better Together, 80 years and more for peace, development and human rights. A theme the UN says comes at a pivotal moment to renew global commitments to multilateralism, solidarity and shared action for people and planet. Ahead of this week's meetings, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, speaking in an interview at the UN headquarters in New York, warned that the world is facing a global crisis with multiplying conflicts and geopolitical divides. He wants leaders to use the gathering to reverse the trends. This week's gathering begins in earnest on Monday.
We are facing a global crisis. Conflicts are multiplying in the context in which geopolitical divides do not allow to effectively address them. There is a sense of impunity. Every country believes they can do whatever they want. So in this context, we absolutely need leaders to come here and to turn the tide, to come here and understand that international cooperation is vital in a moment like this, to come here and do the negotiations and the mediations that are necessary to at least create hope for peace in some of the situations we are facing.
Speaking about the war in Sudan, Mr. Guterres said it's time for Security Council to take tougher measures to ending the civil war. I just remind you, the recent war in Sudan emanated over the integration of the Rapid Support Forces into the army, following the 2021 coup starting with the RSF attacks on government sites in the capital Khartoum and in other cities. Now, Khartoum was soon divided between the two factions, and leader of the Sudanese army, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, relocated his government to Port Sudan.
The suffering of the Sudanese people is horrible. So I think it's time for the Security Council to be able to take, with the agreement of all the key powers, very tough measures on Sudan, to make those Sudanese parties understand that what they are doing is a crime against their own people.
Monday's meeting at the UN headquarters in New York, according to Mr. Guterres, would highlight the need to end the war in Gaza, a war that began after Hamas militants attacked southern Israel on October 7, 2023. Israel has vowed to take out every Hamas member and return the 48 hostages still in captivity in the Gaza Strip. Hence, the war against Hamas continues. Thousands of people have died in Gaza, according to the health ministry there, and pro-Palestinian groups around the world are calling on their governments to stop sending aid and weapons to Israel for what they have termed the genocide going on in Gaza. Currently, there is an ICC warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, together with a former Hamas commander, Mohammed Deif. There have been questions surrounding whether Netanyahu will be arrested when he arrives in New York for the UNGA. The U.S. President Donald Trump ruled that out.
We're going to finish the wars. We have a couple of them going, as you know. You look at Gaza, you look at Russia, Ukraine. We're working on that, and I'm working with Congress on, but I think we'll get it. You know, we did do 7. We actually did more than 7, which people don't like to talk about. But I'd say that and the economy, always the economy, especially bringing down the oil further. If we get the oil down, that war ends.
Salam Mandani said that he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he comes to New York City because of the ICC warrant. Would you intervene if that came up?
Yeah. It's inappropriate.
On Sunday, the UK, Canada and Australia formally recognized a Palestinian state. The Israeli Foreign Ministry says recognition is nothing but a reward for jihadist Hamas.
We are clear. This solution is not a reward for Hamas because it means Hamas can have no future, no role in government, no role in security. We have already prescribed and sanctioned Hamas, and we will go further. I have directed work to sanction other Hamas figures in the coming weeks.
In another development, Nigeria will be represented at this year's UN Great Debate by the Vice President, Kashim Shettima. It will be the second time the vice president will be representing the country at the global event. A statement by the Minister of Foreign Affairs says the vice president will be accompanied by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, and other ministers and government officials. Nigeria's participation will focus on the promotion of sustained economic growth and development, strengthening of international peace and security, advancement of human rights, effective coordination of humanitarian assistance, promotion of justice and international law, commitment to disarmament, and cooperation on drug control, crime prevention, and the fight against international terrorism. Joining us now is former presidential aide and host Inside Sources here on Channels Television, Laolu Akonde, who is attending the UN meetings in New York. Laolu, thank you for joining us on the program.
Good to see you again, Amarachi.
Great to see you, this time in a different capacity. You're attending the meetings in New York. I'm so jealous of you right now, but I have to be content with being in Lagos and speaking to you, you being our eyes and our ears on the ground. So let's begin with, the beginning, of this conversation, which will be the special gathering of the UN, which will be marking 80 years since it was established. Rather, it is the 80th session, beg your pardon, of the United Nations General Assembly. What have you observed so far in New York? Because you've been around for a while now, or even around the UN grounds, indicating how special this session will be.
Yes, quite a lot of stuff going on, including the security and the logistics of the preparations for the heads of states and governments who will start their debates on Tuesday. As a matter of fact, I believe it was on Friday that Thursday actually, that the mayor of New York City addressed a press conference right in front of the United Nations, accompanied by a special agent of the U.S. Secret Service and the police commissioner of the city and other top functionaries of the city around some of the security arrangements, the closure of the streets, how the presidents and the prime ministers and the monarchs that will be coming, how they will be protected, and of course, you can be sure that the U.S. press also raised the question, actually international press also raised the question about some of the warrants of arrest, against Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, whether the New York authorities were going to enforce it. Of course, the mayor said that is none of their business, and they will be welcoming every heads of government and heads of states that will be coming to the event. So a lot of the preparations for that general debate is going on inside the United Nations. Also, there's going to be about 3,000 journalists. So there's a lot of work around how to even manage them. Of course, there will be even much more delegates. Over 150 presidents and heads of states and governments and prime ministers and monarchs and heads of delegations are also being expected. And it's deemed to be the most important gathering of world leaders anywhere on the face of this earth. So quite a lot of things are going on. And it's going to get even more intense by tomorrow. And Tuesday is the peak when the general debate starts with the presidents and prime ministers speaking.
Some people think that, the recognition of Palestine as a state is a nod to Hamas. That's an indirect support for Hamas, the terrorist organization. I've seen some Israeli analysts who are saying that, these countries don't know what they're doing, specifically pointing out the French President Emmanuel Macron and how he's recognized Palestine, the state of Palestine, Canada, the UK, and I think one other country just recognized Palestine as a state this Sunday. What do you make of that, and how that will be interpreted as leaders meet this week?
Okay, so generally the sentiments around the UN is that the two-state solution has always been the template, that has been, in essence, the principle of it has been accepted, in the international system globally, the two-state solution. And you recall that, the U.S. has led the effort, especially dating back to the time of President Bill Clinton, to actually get them to make this concession at a time when Israel was even willing to give more spaces and lands, than anything you can imagine now. So I think to the extent that everybody globally seemed to agree to the principle of the two-state solution, what then was left was the question of, when that was going to happen. And I think why it is true, and this is the sentiment that I've had, among diplomats even here since I came here. While it is true that the Hamas, were the ones that started, the assault that has caused this ongoing conflict and war with Israel and Hamas, many people believe, and is the sentiment in the United Nations General Assembly, that Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu has actually, gone too far, in the response. And there are a lot of, narrative and discourse around, how atrocious some of the things that has been reported, including some of the testimonies that the United Nations Security Council has had from doctors, who were on the ground as to the very deplorable humanitarian situation. So I think the emerging sentiment is to say that, look, I mean, it might just be right, on the part of those countries like UK and Canada and the rest of them to say that, look, maybe we should just go ahead and recognize the Palestinian nation, as a way of pushing back on what many consider to be the atrocious extent of Israel's activities in defending itself. So that's the sense that I get, about how it's happening, and that was why I was saying to you that one of the journalists, the U.S. journalists, actually asked the mayor and the police commissioner of New York City on Thursday at the press conference outside the UN whether indeed the New York police was going to honor some of the warrant of arrest against Netanyahu, because the sentiment is that, Israel has gone really, really too far in how it has defended itself. People concede to Hamas terrorist designation easily, but at the same time, people say that, look, Mr. Netanyahu has been very, very excessive in the response.
But I'll tell you what, President Donald Trump did say he will also not be arresting the Prime Minister, the Israeli Prime Minister, when he arrives in the United States. Well, he can do that because the U.S., of course, is not signatory to the ICC. So no law enforcement agency in the U.S. is bound, to comply with the arrest warrant. Perhaps African countries have a say in this. I know Nigeria has condemned, in actual fact, some of the attacks by Israel on some of the places in Gaza, the killing of the journalists that happened a few weeks ago, the 6 journalists, even the 4 journalists. But we really haven't seen any African countries. I think the only country that stands out is South Africa, that has stood up against Israel, and which has taken Israel to the ICC, hence the arrest warrants that we have against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What are you hearing, though, from the circles that you have been, just fraternizing with, what the African perspective might be on this? Because according to Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, the attacks in Gaza will be a major issue on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, of course, and he has been a consistent moral voice, especially on what is considered to be the excessive response of the Israeli. I mean, I think the African position has been a little bit, nuanced. I think the sentiment among African diplomats and among African countries generally is in favor of a two-state solution, in favor of Palestinian nation, and it's also, trying to state what many people believe to be the excessive response of the Netanyahu Israeli-led government. Now, Nigeria, as you will find out, has been, of course, everybody condemned, the stuff going on in Hamas, the violence and all of that. But I think Nigeria has also been trying to maintain a very a balancing act, because of course, both countries, Nigeria has a relationship with both the Palestinians, a very active relationship with the Palestinians, and a very active relationship with the Israelis, especially under the Tinubu administration. There is even a deeper relationship with the Israelis, than under Buhari. So Nigeria is just trying to be careful and balance the situation. It will be interesting to hear what the Nigerian national statement will be when the vice president addresses the General Assembly, I think on Wednesday. But generally, Africans are behind the Palestinians. They condemn the excessive force by the Israelis. And of course, like you said, the South Africans have even taken it a step forward to take the Israeli nation to the ICC.
President Tinubu just returned to the country last week after spending some time in France. I believe it's the second time we've heard the president went to France on a working leave. And that's something that Nigerians are trying to get used to. The fact that the president will travel similarly on vacation, and then he'll tell you it's a working leave. I wanted us to explore a bit about that, and I know that you have spent some time, with the presidency. You have been around those corridors of power. If you could, explain to us, what this entails, and what really it means for people to really understand what President Tinubu has been up to. What could have made him so tired that he really cannot make it to the UN?
Well, I think if I remember very well, the idea of working vacation, I think, it started with President Buhari, and many people interpreted it then to his unwillingness in the second term to, because it comes down to, if the president is going to be on vacation, it comes down to the fact that then he has to transfer power to his deputy, the vice president. So when you see the president saying that, okay, well, I'm going on vacation, but it's a working vacation, what that means simply and straightforward is that they are not willing to transfer power to their vice president. That's just the meaning. Because if you're going to go on a vacation, you go on a vacation and you relinquish power while you have gone on a vacation. To the credit of President Buhari, a few times in the first term, he actually, transferred power to his vice president. Of course, all of that changed in the second term. And it was in the second term that this idea of a working vacation started. During the Buhari administration, when he said he was going on working vacation, of course, that it meant because he wasn't then willing to hand over power. And then, President Tinubu has done that, I think, twice already to say, okay, yes, this is a vacation, but it's a working vacation. So I don't need to transfer power. So that is the way I interpret that. How it affects the operations of the country, and then the issue of, whether he's in fact tired, having gone to Brazil and then Japan, well, the UNGA is a meeting that you have a notice of attendance 1 year ahead. So for instance, now everybody knows that it's the third week in September. As a matter of fact, it's normally the third Tuesday in September that the general debates commence. So it's not a question of, you don't know when you are doing the planning. I think just for some reasons, I don't think it's the president being tired. If he wanted to come, then he would have featured that in his plans. But I suspect that the president was irritated by maybe what he saw in 2023 when he came to the UN. Maybe he felt it was just too rowdy, and he felt that there are other ways for him to do his job. But the reason why this is even more worrying is that we don't have a permanent representative and ambassador at the UN as we speak. Just like we don't have ambassadors and high commissioners in the about 107 foreign missions that the country has, And in addition to that, our president is not even coming to the biggest multilateral platform in the world. We need to speak a lot more about this, just so to give the president some kind of feedback that this doesn't seem to be something that we understand exactly what he's doing.
Laulu, I trust that you have already had, those kinds of conversations with the Nigerian mission in New York, the consulate there, and I'm sure that, they have been whispering into your ear some of the challenges that they have had having to run operations at the consulate and how things have been in the US. And most of our missions all across the world are also complaining about the lack of funds to do stuff and the fact that there is no permanent representative, an ambassador or a high commissioner or, some permanent representative of government. What are they saying to you about how they're able to carry on despite, these looming challenges?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, Amarachi, because, we have, in New York and in several of these foreign missions, in quite a number of the instances, very competent, well-trained and experienced foreign service officers who ought to have been promoted to become an ambassador. So besides the political appointees who will normally be mixed with the career diplomats, we have some of them already holding diplomatic positions in some of these missions. But guess what? Because in diplomacy, it is about the title that you carry. So even though they have the expertise, they have the knowledge, they even have the contacts, and they know exactly what to do. But because they don't carry that title, ambassador plenipotentiary, a personal representative of the president, they can't do as much as they know they can do. Because there are certain doors that wouldn't open for you if you don't carry the title and the credential as an ambassador. So that's the kind of explanation that I have had since I arrived, a few days ago. And there's a bit of frustration on the part of some of them who clearly understand the system, and who know what to do, who have the exposure, who have had the experience, but because they don't have that title, ambassador plenipotentiary and extraordinary, they are not recognized, and it's very frustrating.
This explanation is really not lost on me because I'm used to speaking to, some of these ambassadors and the ones who left. And a lot of them are quite anxious about what's going on, at these foreign missions. A few foreign missions that I've spoken to have complained about, the lack of funds. They've also talked about how difficult it is for them to just live daily lives, carry on with, normal life expectancies, such as paying school fees, house rents, just basic day-to-day running, I guess, of their own lives. So the meaning and the importance of it really not lost on me. But who will be welcoming the vice president when he arrives in New York?
Okay, so it was quite interesting that after the presidency issued a statement, I think yesterday, that the vice president will be representing Nigeria. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs also did their own statement. I mean, which is something that is quite, it's a little bit iffy. I mean, when the presidency speaks, nobody else speaks. That's the ultimate in government. So that's just a psychic. You wonder, so the president issues a statement and then the ministry also issues a statement. But what you then find in the statement of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is that the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Tuga, will be accompanying the Vice President on this trip. And the head of the consulate in New York and the head of the Nigerian permanent mission, because there has to be somebody who is just coordinating things, but neither of them is an ambassador. So these are the people who will be at the airport to welcome both the Vice President and the Foreign Affairs Minister. But the way protocol normally happens is that even though the Foreign Affairs Minister might be coming with the Vice President, if he hasn't gone ahead, when he gets down, he gets down first from the flight. If they take the same flight, he gets down first and then joins the protocol line on the first line to welcome the Vice President. So that is how it normally happens.
So there will be no permanent representative of Nigeria in New York to welcome, just a head of consular possibly, or an acting consul general will be on the ground. Now, Lou, I guess I've squeezed everything possible out of you, except how long you're staying in New York and what's for dinner tonight. But I guess this is where we'll have to leave it. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I hope to reach out to you during the rest of the week. I'm sure there's a lot we'll need to talk about, especially when the Vice President does give his speech to the UN General Assembly. Thanks again.
Certainly. All right. Thank you so much, Amarachi.
That's the program this week. Follow on all our socials for more. I'm Amarachi Uvani. I'll see you next week.